Hi, my name is Sean Richardson. I'm going to be refuting Deanna's claim about the major claim was that electronic communication negatively affects communication skills of today's society. There are three secondary claims. The electronic communication fails to meet all the interpersonal communication needs of an individual, that electronic communication decreases perception of the outside world, and that electronic communication sends unpracticed communicators into a professional world. So at the beginning of the speech, Deanna presented that 82% of Americans own a cell phone. That was through a Pew Research project. My claim is that if most everyone has a cell phone, we should be practiced communicators using that medium. And while electronic communication may fail to meet the needs of interpersonal communication, it may not be the only form of communication you're allowed, says Natalie Canaver, the author of The Truth About Better Business Communication. She says, electronic communication is how we interact with most people. Your emails may be the only thing that colleagues, bosses, clients, and customers ever see from you. Your professionalism, or lack of it, is your calling card. So there isn't sometimes an alternative. You develop your communication skills, and it doesn't overall negatively affect your communication. While the standards covered in the first claim were insightful and interesting, they were not especially useful for electronic communication, because in all four of the standards fail for video conferencing, such as your cell phone, like FaceTime or Google Video Chat or Skype, because then you're able to see the other person, talk back and forth, interrupt, and respond immediately. But just the same, there are non-electronic forms of communications that don't pass these standards, such as passing notes or writing letters. And while email does leave opportunity for miscommunication and misinterpretation, as presented by her first point, so do all forms of communication, even non-electronic forms. So electronic communication does sometimes leave the receiver lacking, but in video conferencing, such as those types of communication, it does allow for things like tone, facial expression, volume, and all the other criteria mentioned. So there are forms of electronic communication that don't follow with her statement. So that's a failure to a problem with the claim. For the second secondary claim, the assumption is wrong. The claim says that communication decreases perception of the outside world. So by using electronics, you're being distracted. But that says that if you're not using electronics, you're actually practicing interpersonal communication, which you may not be. You may be out for a run or reading a book, and that doesn't improve your interpersonal communications just because you're using an electronic device. So just because you're distracted doesn't mean you're missing out on gaining communication skills. And and just the same, it might be impossible to multitask, like she says, but that doesn't matter, because if we one second. Electronics are a large part of our lives, and while when they help us, they help us to communicate when we wouldn't normally. So, like take for instance, using social networking or using Facebook or Twitter or whatever. There's a Pew Research article, the one that was previously mentioned, that says that 88% of Americans especially appreciate their cell phones, that their cell phones help them connect with friends and family to arrange plans. And the same article states that 91% of U.S. teens who use social networking sites do so to connect with friends already established outside of electronic communication. So social networking allows people who wouldn't ordinarily communicate regularly to do so. Dana Boyd, in Social Networking Sites, Definition, History, and Scholarship, argues that MySpace and Facebook enable U.S. youth to socialize with their friends even when they're unable to gather in unmediated situations. She argues that social networking sites are network publics that support sociability, just as unmediated public spaces do. So here we are. So while it may be possible to multitask, it has nothing to do with electronic communication. This problem also exists outside of electronic communication. So while you're trying to read a book or go for a run, you're also unable to communicate interpersonally at the same time. So even while we're not using electronics, we have the same problem. So the response to the third claim, which was that electronic communication sends unpracticed communicators into the professional world, from the total topic we gather that we'll be discussing communication skills. But what we don't consider is that there's a difference between communication skills and interpersonal skills. The difference is that interpersonal skills is a subset of communication skills. And while electronic communications might be hindering interpersonal communication, it cannot negatively affect communication skills if practice makes perfect. So communication skills are vital, obviously, we all agree on that, but communication via electronic means is a large portion of communication. In Email in an Instant, a 2009 book about the troubles of business email, they state that people and corporations receive an average of 175 emails per day. Another report from Plantronics in September of 2010, who surveyed 1,800 business employees in the US, UK, China, India, Germany, and Australia, states that nearly 83% surveyed use email as a primary communication tool for business, and that the use of email by professionals has increased 78% over the past 5 years. The article also states that while 72% of those surveyed said that they had to follow up an unintelligible email with a phone call, they've still clarified the message being sent with another means of electronic communication. Businesses are now larger, and the Institute of International Finance, Inc. shows that more than 80% of U.S. businesses are now in competition in the global market. Because of all the opportunity that electronic communication affords us, we have become more reliant on it. There's not an efficient means of communicating on a global scale as a business without using electronic communication. So instead of shunning this method of communicating, we need to embrace it and practice it and become more effective at using it. But practicing this does not impede our overall communication skills. So I'd just like to reiterate that we need to practice electronic communications and not shun it. So thank you.
All right, well, the setup starts off pretty well, and everything's going to be relatively clear. I thought you had a good summary of what the general approach was going to be. This is a good illustration of one of the problems with counterclaims, because I'd have to look back and see what the advocate's exact claim was and what the secondary issues were, because some of your points I'm sure are true, but I'm not sure that they are mutually exclusive from the claim that the advocate was presenting. And I think that you've made a very good case for the need for electronic communication, and that there are other electronic media that supplement the communication process. And this argument that it still constitutes communication is a reasonably acceptable thing to include, although it seems to be a little bit reductive, especially if the advocate's argument is that the electronic communication is interfering with our interpersonal communication. It's preventing us from developing those skills as appropriately as we could. That's where I think the argument that the advocate was presenting was headed, and like I said, it's been a while since we heard it in the same detail, and so as a consequence, I'm not sure that your position responds to those issues. However, I thought that you did a very good job suggesting that the electronic communication is important, providing proof on those particular points, giving us a justification for those ideas. I just think it needed to be a little bit more integrated